Ancient scrolls that were buried in volcanic ash during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius are now being deciphered 2,000 years later, thanks in part to artificial intelligence.
There's a moment, somewhere between discovery and dread, when a researcher stares at a screen and realizes that what the machine just translated was never supposed to be read again. Not because the text was lost, but because someone, thousands of years ago, may have made sure it would be. That is where we find ourselves today, at the edge of an extraordinary technological leap, one that is giving voice to the silenced dead, and in doing so, raising questions that no algorithm was designed to answer. Artificial intelligence has begun to decode ancient languages, not slowly, not partially, but with a speed and precision that has stunned archaeologists, linguists, and historians alike. Scripts that baffled scholars for centuries are yielding to machine learning systems in a matter of months. And what those systems are uncovering is not merely poetry, trade records, or royal proclamations. Buried inside the oldest written words on Earth are patterns, recurring, cross-cultural, unmistakable, that speak of catastrophe, control, and collapse. The machines have no idea what they've found. We, on the other hand, should be paying very close attention. To understand why this moment is so significant, you need to understand what lost scripts actually means. It does not mean languages we forgot to study. It means writing systems that exist in physical form, carved into stone, pressed into clay, woven into cloth, scratched onto bone, but which no living human being can read. We can see the symbols. We can count them, photograph them, digitize them, but their meaning has been severed from us, sometimes for millennia. The reasons vary. Colonization erased oral traditions. Empires burned libraries. Religions suppressed competing systems of knowledge. And sometimes the speakers simply vanished, taken by plague, famine, or conquest, and the language died with them. For centuries, the only way to crack such a script was to find a bilingual key, something like the Rosetta Stone, which gave scholars access to ancient Egyptian by pairing the same text in 3 languages. Without that kind of bridge, decipherment was essentially guesswork, careful, scholarly, meticulous guesswork, but guesswork nonetheless. Some scripts had teams of experts working on them for decades, with almost no progress. Then came the machines. Modern AI systems, specifically deep learning models built on neural networks, approach language in a fundamentally different way than humans do. They do not need to understand meaning to identify structure. They process thousands of symbol occurrences at once, mapping frequency, position, and context. They detect patterns invisible to the human eye, the way a particular symbol almost always appears at the beginning of a sequence, or how a cluster of 3 glyphs recurs across different inscriptions, separated by geography and centuries. In linguistics, those patterns carry meaning. They suggest grammar, syntax, categories of words. The AI doesn't know what the word means, but it knows the word is probably a verb, or a name, or a number. And from that structural skeleton, human researchers can begin to build an interpretation. What makes this especially powerful is the scale. A human scholar analyzing oracle bone inscriptions from ancient China might spend a career cataloging a few thousand glyphs. An AI system trained on the same dataset can process hundreds of thousands of digitized inscriptions in hours, cross-referencing symbol variants, mapping relationships, and flagging anomalies that no individual researcher could ever catch. When Chinese scientists applied this approach to Shang Dynasty oracle bones, animal bones, and turtle shells used for ritual divination around 1300 BCE, the results were startling. The AI matched fragmented, damaged inscriptions to known characters with extraordinary accuracy. But more disturbing were the patterns in the content itself. Recurring questions about plague, drought, celestial events, and the appropriate timing of silence. When to speak, when to stay quiet. The priests who carved these questions were not just asking the gods for guidance. They were, in some readings, asking when it was safe to reveal what they knew. The same unsettling theme surfaced when researchers turned AI tools toward the undeciphered Indus Valley script, a writing system more than 4,000 years old, spread across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, attached to one of the most advanced urban civilizations of the ancient world. The Indus cities were remarkable: standardized bricks, sophisticated drainage systems, no evidence of a warrior class or monumental palaces. And they left behind thousands of inscribed seals and tablets, none of which anyone can read. Unlike Egyptian or Sumerian, the Indus script has no bilingual companion text. It simply exists, waiting. AI researchers have spent years analyzing its structure. What they've found is that the script almost certainly represents a spoken language, not merely a list of symbols or pictographic records. The statistical properties of the Indus script mirror those of real languages in the way symbols are distributed, combined, and repeated. There is syntax here. There is grammar. But the content remains locked, and the few researchers willing to speculate about what the script might encode based on its structure and archaeological context have noted something curious. The symbols cluster around themes of trade, yes, but also around themes of boundary, threshold, limit. The recurring symbols that appear to function like titles or roles are associated, in a number of excavated contexts, with objects of containment and sealing. What was being contained? What was being sealed? No discussion of AI and lost scripts can avoid the Villa of the Papyri, a Roman library buried under pyroclastic flows from Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, preserved as carbonized scrolls for nearly 2,000 years. When the Vesuvius Challenge launched in 2023, it brought together machine learning engineers, classicists, and imaging specialists with a single goal: virtually unroll these scrolls using CT scanning and teach AI systems to detect ink that no human eye could see. The results exceeded all expectations. By early 2024, researchers had recovered thousands of legible Greek letters. The philosophical text that emerged was authored by Philodemus, an Epicurean thinker who wrote during one of the most politically volatile periods in Roman history. His work openly challenged the use of religion and fear as tools of political control. His school argued that divine punishment was a fiction invented to keep people obedient. But some of what the AI extracted from the scroll went beyond political philosophy. Certain fragments, still under scholarly debate, contain descriptions of recurring historical cycles, periods of fire, followed by imposed silence, followed by what the text calls renewal under new authority. The language is not that of a surprised observer. It reads like documentation, like a pattern being recorded by someone who had seen it before, or who believed they understood how it worked. With these metaphors, ancient philosophy often cloaked its most dangerous ideas in allegory, but the specificity is difficult to dismiss. The scroll survived the eruption of a volcano. It survived 2,000 years of burial, and when a machine finally read it, what came out was a description of the world burning and knowledge going quiet, and the learned few preparing for what comes after. Across the Pacific, in the forests and stone cities of Mesoamerica, the Maya left behind one of the most visually complex writing systems ever invented, a system of interlocking glyphs where a single image could represent a syllable, a whole word, or an abstract concept. For a long time, Mayan texts were thought to be purely ceremonial. Then, as decipherment progressed through the 20th century, it became clear they were historical records of extraordinary detail, dynastic histories, astronomical calculations, accounts of wars and famines, and political betrayals. AI tools have now accelerated Mayan glyph classification to a degree that was unthinkable a decade ago, extracting and identifying glyphs from damaged monuments with pixel-level precision. What those glyphs say is not comforting. They document the collapse of their own civilization with a clarity that feels almost forensic. Droughts are recorded. Food supplies are quantified. The failure of rituals to stop the decline is noted. And throughout, a recurring phrase, roughly translated as "the sky falls out of balance," appears at intervals that correspond, archaeologists believe, to periods of genuine environmental catastrophe. The Maya were not simply describing disasters. They were trying to explain them, to find the cause, to assign responsibility. And when their explanations failed, they recorded that failure too. There is something in those glyphs that reads less like mythology and more like a civilization asking itself, in real time, why nothing was working, and finding no answer. Perhaps the most haunting case is Nushu, a script invented exclusively by women in Hunan Province, China, over several centuries, used to pass letters, songs, and stories between women who were denied formal education. It was written in embroidery on fans, in private correspondence, passed mother to daughter, sister to sister. It was deliberately kept from men. When AI researchers at Dartmouth began applying deep learning to Nushu in 2025, working from just a small set of text pairs, the model reached nearly 50% accuracy on an entirely unknown script, a remarkable result. But the content that emerged was not the gentle poetry scholars had assumed it to be. The themes were grief, warning, and endurance. Women writing to warn each other. Women documenting suffering that official records would never acknowledge. Women encoding knowledge about what men in power do when they think no one is watching. There is a particular kind of terror in that. Not the terror of prophecy or supernatural warning. The terror of recognition, of reading something written in secret centuries ago, about silencing and control, and finding it still legible. Here is what the machines have found, taken together, across civilizations that never met, that spoke unrelated languages, that built their cities on opposite sides of the planet. The same themes appear with disturbing consistency. Catastrophe cycles, the suppression of knowledge, fires both literal destruction and metaphor for purge, the deliberate quieting of voices before and after periods of collapse. The careful preservation of certain information informs that the powerful could not easily access or destroy. The AI does not find this remarkable. It has no framework for remarkable. It processes data. It finds patterns. It flags repetitions. What it cannot do is tell us what to do with the fact that civilizations reaching the limit of their existence seem to have encoded the same warnings, in the same structural forms, in languages that should have had nothing in common. That interpretation falls to us, and we are only beginning. The scrolls are unrolling. The bones are speaking. The glyphs are giving up their meaning. And somewhere in the noise of all that recovered signal is a message, patient, persistent, and addressed, it seems, directly to the present moment. Whether we are wise enough to listen is a question the machines cannot answer for us. That one is ours to figure out alone.